And when CJ's eyes are downfield and he's moving in the pocket, one of the things I love about him is his ability to slide around in the pocket like a Joe Burrow with his eyes downfield. That's the guy I saw rookie year. I look at the Giants roster the year they won a playoff game in Minnesota with Danny Dimes, and I got to say, I think this offense is better. In fact, I think the drafting of Travis Hunter is one of the safest plays in the draft, because if he's not good at one thing, he's going to be good at the other. The key to that happening is Cam Ward being everything that Borgonzi and Callahan think he can be. Welcome to the Green Light Podcast presented by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code GREENLIGHT. You will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code GREENLIGHT. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. If that bet loses, you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Just make sure you use bonus code GREENLIGHT when you sign up. Happy Monday, y'all. It has been a whirlwind of a week for your boy and for the Green Light crew, but we loaded up on interviews. So you've already seen some of them. You've seen Borgonzi, you've seen Latham, you've seen Brian Callahan, all from Tennessee. Jeffrey Simmons is in the hopper for y'all. That's coming up. Guy's absolutely enormous. I mean, he could crush me. Like I don't know what I would do if I had to fight Jeffrey Simmons, like at all. I'd definitely call my brother, but I don't even know if that would be enough. The guy's huge. Anyways, Tennessee was fun. We'll get to that in a second. We also had Will Anderson drop today. So if you want to hear basically like the most polished defensive end of all time entering into year three, like from a standpoint of, I don't know, man. The guys just got it together.
Like, I don't know if it was because Will was like, he had meetings canceled or what, but he was, and like we were in person, but he was ready to go.
I remember him being awesome when we interviewed him like 2 years ago to the day, basically, when he was this bright-eyed, incoming rookie out of Bama, and he's Stanford Steve's favorite player of all time and all that stuff. And Stanford Steve was like, "You're just going to love this guy." And I'm like, I don't know if I could love him as much as you're saying I'm gonna love him. Like, how could I love somebody as much as that? And I kind of do love Will Anderson that much. After sitting down with him for 30 minutes in person, I just was so impressed. Like, when I interviewed him the first time, he was definitely a rookie, but you were like, oh, he's so mature and he's so cool and humble and all that stuff. And then the second time, I'm like, bro, that's a window into, how I've said before, I'm jealous of the maturity of Max Crosby at his age to kind of cast aside. You think you're focused when you're in your 20s, and I was laser focused. But, some of these guys, Crosby, Will Anderson is like, he's like a 33-year-old from a maturity standpoint, and he's got the energy of a 23-year-old. So it's like, yeah, he just got meetings canceled and all that shit. And he's probably hype, and maybe he's excited to talk to your boy because he knows we do one of the best D-line interviews in football. But he was fantastic. I just was motivated by sitting with him, So that was great. Will Anderson, who's also big as shit. I didn't know he was that big. Like,
huge.
Like he standing next to him. Some guys that you're like, we stood next to Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell walked into the indoor to do the interview in Detroit, and we're getting to Detroit now. And I felt like I was as big as him, like as tall as him. He's built like a guard with really long arms and really wide functional shoulders.
Yep.
Like he's got a very unique build. But he's not a guy that, like, you run into a Penei Sewell, and I'm not saying he wouldn't eat your lunch. Like, he's not as big as you thought he'd be. I'm certainly not going to say that, hey man, I thought you'd be bigger. But Will Anderson is like bigger than you think he'd be. And he's just been a fantastic kind of like all-around player. I love his motor. I love, the way he works in the run game. the solid bag of tricks he's got out on the edge and pass rush. He was fantastic. So we've got those interviews coming out. And then next week, you're going to have Jack Campbell, who I absolutely loved. Jack Campbell, linebacker, Iowa Hawkeye, Detroit Lion. We could have hung out for a while. I felt like I really liked the guy. And then Penei Sewell, who's just like, he's a stone cold killer. You'll enjoy that interview as well. Like, that dude just got done competing with the likes of Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter when he walked in the indoor. So, you know, he was all business. And then, you know, obviously the one that makes the trip to Detroit worth it, right, is Dan Campbell. Sitting down with Dan Campbell for 20 minutes was fantastic. It's exactly what you would expect. And when you talk about Dan Campbell to people around that building, they're like, what you see is what you get. He is the purest example of that adage. I mean, he's just a fucking dude. You know what I'm saying? And if you played a long time in the league and you spent time in locker rooms with like a bunch of alphas, you know, like dudes that they just have an inherent leadership quality about them. Even if they could be the second tight end on a team, they could be, you know, they could be the third guard, they could be, you know, the third rusher. You know, Dan Campbell's one of those guys that if he was in your locker room, you'd be like, bro, I'd follow this guy to the end of the earth. And now he's coaching a football team. It's almost like a cheat code because of the way he connects with those players and shit. Like sitting down with him for 20 minutes, I felt like I knew him for a long time. Now I text Dan every once in a while because he'd been on the show and we got some mutual friends. And obviously I'm a big admirer of his, but and I'm one of the people from day one that was pouring cold water on that. Hey, he's a fucking Neanderthal. He wants to bite kneecaps. Well, the kneecap biting's going pretty well. He's not just a Neanderthal. He's a smart guy, and I really enjoyed talking to him. So that's like 7-8 interviews that we did, including we got to go on Raw Room. Shout out to the Roomies. Got the hopefully the locals, the green light, you know, our version of the Roomies and Raw Room's Roomies can come together for that fantastic episode. That was a marathon. We got to see the Raw Room set there in Nashville the first night.
That'll be out this week, this Wednesday. So pop over and make sure you check out that after you see our interviews.
Yeah, I'll make sure to mute my notifications as the whole world asks me why I wash my ass with a bar of soap. As if that's like the dirtiest thing of all time. So yeah, just a little inside joke there. But go listen to the Raw Room, watch the Raw Room this week. I think they're one of the best podcasts out there. I thought Jay Carr's just like he's a whiz. Darren Bates, the guy who started the podcast, he's coaching with the Panthers. King Dunlap, who's just an enormous human being, all of 6'8", 6'9", 6'10". I think he said he was really actually 6'10", but he hit
Philly legend.
He's a Philly legend, played for the Chargers as well. They said he wouldn't tell people how tall he really was because he thought it would work against him, you know? So he kind of kept his height under wraps. I guess when you get to the combine, you kind of hunch a little bit or something. But all those guys are fucking awesome. I love Raw Room. And you should too. Go check it out. Me and Dr. Fax went on there. The trip was amazing. Okay, I'm going to get to the AFC South preview in a second. Long awaited for those of you who have been following along, watching these previews. Probably this week at some point you were like, hey, where the fuck is the AFC South? Like, you don't care about us? I do care about y'all. So much so that we went to Titans camp to see Cam Ward in person. It just was a week where there was no time. We were running and gunning from thing to the next thing. And I thought to take a moment to shout out the Green Light crew. They worked their asses off. They were dynamite on the road this week. Cowboy Reed, Tanner, Aiden, Charlie, the whole crew, Nolan, and I fucking working at the Airbnb on probably like 3-4 hours sleep. We were texting at 2:30 in the morning, like notes for the upcoming interviews. The night before the Detroit visit, we'll get to why we were up so late in a second. The whole crew was fantastic, and so we've got a bunch of good interviews for you, a bunch of good content. And now finally I've been able to catch my breath, and we will do the AFC South preview today. Our trip started in Nashville, which is a fantastic city. I don't spend enough time there. The airport is like second to none. Fantastic airport. Shout out to the pharmacy. Got served by a Birds fan there. Just a fantastic airport in general. Very clean. Good people watching. 10 out of 10. We spent the night at a lovely Airbnb in Nashville, which set the tone for a week where I was sure the lodging was going to be top notch everywhere we went. And so as we departed that beautiful, pristine Nashville International Airport, I don't know if it's international, I just said that, and landed in Detroit and waited to get our rental car. We hopped in the rental car and headed to our next Airbnb. And I don't know my way around Detroit, but I assume like there's probably some not so good areas there. I've heard. We get off at the exit and we're in 2 rental cars, and I turn to one of my associates and I say, I hope the Airbnb is not here. And I look at the GPS, and the GPS says like 0.8 miles to go. And I said, well, it's, city blocks. Like this could be one area and the Airbnb could be in another area altogether. The area we were in just kept going. And we pull up to our Airbnb and I'm like, where's Ashton Kutcher? There's no fucking way that this is actually where we're staying. Cowboy! What happened?
Dude.
Now, no, hold on. If you've been a fan of this podcast for a while, yeah, okay. Now people are going to be upset that the people that rent this Airbnb. It's a good-looking Airbnb online, right? He could not wait to show his work. He was like, he had this loaded. He was like, look at this fucking beautiful Airbnb. Look at that. Look at that. Look at all the seating. Like just one picture of the outside of the house. Yeah, it looks humble.
Well, even
the first time, this is the first time I'm seeing these pictures, so I'm referencing it with what we actually saw.
Let me put it this way, okay? And I don't know, like the listing. Look, it's got a fucking foosball table, a pool table, the whole thing. Although that light wasn't working, so we pull up, and I'm like, all right, and somebody speeds by. When you hear the cars with no mufflers, like generally like it's going to be a long night, and there's people like drag racing, and there's just people walking around out in the streets, and it's like 10 o'clock at this point, and I'm like, all right, well, we're here. And we're getting in the Airbnb, and some of the neighbors are kind of like staring a little bit, and I'm like, big gulps, I think we walk in the Airbnb, and I'm like, oh, this is a repurposed crack house, no? Like that's what's going on here. Like we definitely found us a repurposed place where they used to cook crack cocaine, and possibly at one point probably an abandoned house. You know how the way factories leaving Detroit and the Midwest and the Rust Belt generally negatively affected cities like Detroit for a long period of time. I'm pretty sure this Airbnb at one point was vacant, and maybe they weren't cooking the crack in there. Maybe they were doing a little of the doing of the crack in there. You know what I'm saying? And so, anyways,
for sure,
right? Okay, so I'm not the only one. So walk in. There's exposed asbestos. There's a basement that I'm like, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. There's no light on in the basement. That's where the foosball table is. There's no light down there. I'm pretty sure somebody's died in this house. There are holes in the kitchen. There's a stove that's got no ventilation above it. You try to cook there's
literally a cabinet above it, a wood cabinet above the stove.
You're taking your life into your own hands a little bit in this Airbnb. Not to mention, we're clearly a bunch of out of towners. I mean, we're it's like 50 bags in our trucks, and we're unpacking, and it's loud. You're hearing suitcases rolling, and if you're wondering where this Airbnb is, maybe don't dox the Airbnb. I want other people to be able to enjoy the full E-Course Michigan experience. It was something else. Like it was to the point that I was downstairs, and at one point Charlie walked up to me and said, "Hey, there are vacancies at the Hampton Inn." As I'm shooting an MTV Cribs for Greenlight. And I was like, fuck yeah. Nothing sounds better than good, strong internet, a hot shower, and like a continental breakfast right now, and like a hinge on the door that I can double lock. We're in Detroit, Michigan. We OD'd on grit. I'll put it that way. Dan Campbell wants his teams gritty. We got the full grit experience in Ecorse, Michigan. Everybody was really nice to us. I just had the feeling that we were food. And I had the feeling that somebody had possibly died in our Airbnb at some point. So we left and went to a hotel called the Leo Hotel. We got off at our floor, and there was like a big bar set up in the lobby of the third floor, which I'm like, what kind of a hotel is this? It's like a third. It's hard to describe, man. Detroit is a one-of-a-kind place. And when I asked Reed, I said, did you look at the crime map? Because we were in like the tomato sauce red part of the crime map. Cowboy was like, I don't really look at the areas when I book an Airbnb.
Well, so like I had like 6 laid out. Then we had another lodging that was supposed to come through that fell through last minute. So the other Airbnbs that I lined up, this was the only one remaining, and it didn't stand out. Like reviews were decent. There wasn't a significant price drop that that you would expect.
Yeah, that's because people were writing the reviews at gunpoint.
Yeah, everybody we told who we were about to stay in Ecorse, it wasn't just like, yikes, sketchy area. It was like, oh fuck,
fuck. I thought it'd end up being a really fun experience. We got to really experience Ecorse. How many people can say they spent part of a night in Ecorse, Michigan?
And we got like one of the hardest pictures possible out of it.
Exactly, dude. I ripped a dart. I was in such a hurry to rip a dart on the stoop, like, because I was like, man, we better get the fuck out of here. But Bo wanted to he was like, let's do like an album cover. I was like, sure, give me a Marlboro. I was in such a hurry. I lit the wrong end of the cigarette. You know what I'm saying? Like, my head was on such a swivel. I lit the wrong end of the dart, and then in order to rectify the situation, I had to bite the filter off. Like from the exposed asbestos and the dart. Like, I don't know if that's what gave me the Honolulu flu, but I've been feeling like shit ever since.
How's your hand after punching that punching bag?
Oh, hands fine, dude. Good. Hands fine. I went to an arcade yesterday with the kids, and there was one of those punching machines, and I had to punch it 35 times. I was trying to make the top 5. So I don't think those things fucking work. There was a 14-year-old there, and he was like neck and neck with me. I was like, come on, bro. It's like, you're telling me. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, hands fine. I'm a little bit tired. That was a fun week. When you talk, and we'll get into the Titans portion of it in a second, but Detroit, the fans are amazing, man. They were so cool to us. Like, we were at an open practice, and I swear you would have thought I played for the Lions. Like, a lot of these kids, and thankfully their parents could point out who I was, but like a lot of the kids were like excited to see me. I'm like, I wasn't even like playing when you were born. And I never played here, but people were so cool. It was just like, for everything Detroit, the rep Detroit gets, the fans, and there were a ton of them at this open practice, were so cool. And we heard from some locals, some listeners out there, and we appreciate them. Also got a chance to catch up with a lot of people I hadn't seen in a long time, like guys like Ray Agnew, who was a scout at the Rams back when I was drafted, and now he's the assistant GM there. Obviously, Brad Holmes is there. Alex Anzalone popped in to say hello to us. A number of guys that I hadn't seen in a while, and these camp visits are fun for that reason. But it was also fun because you got to see the Detroit Lions practice up close, and boy, do they look fucking good. Jameson Williams might go for 1,500 yards if he puts it all together. That guy's terrifying.
He looked awesome.
He looked awesome.
Seeing Gibbs at full speed in person is like a different kind of experience. Like the way you described the Xavier Worthy reverse, like you see that, that's right, and it's like, holy fuck, this guy's moving.
Yep.
Really, dude, rolling.
It was good on good. It was truly good on good, and it was and shout out to the Texans who were kind enough to have us to the hotel to interview Will Anderson, and I get the vibe with that team. Like they're dead serious and they're primed to make a run, and we'll talk about them in a second. Got to catch up with Nick Caserio, guys like that. Derek Barnett, walks up behind me when I'm getting ready to interview Will Anderson, and he's got no hair anymore. And, he's a grizzled vet. And it's just crazy to see the guys that were rookies like Jalen Mills. He wasn't a rookie, but he was a young guy when I was with the Eagles. And just so proud to see them, kind of playing out their careers to this stage. And, Barnett's going on 10 years. I think Mills has been in about 10 years. And it's really cool to catch up with dudes. Saw Nico Collins in the lobby. He remembered me. He was on the show a month or two ago. Just cool to catch up with guys. It's energizing. It reminds you that football's here. And for Texans fans, thankfully, football is here because you want to get the taste out of your mouth from last year, right? So we'll start the AFC South preview right now. In December 2022, when the Colts and the Texans are playing and Lovie Smith is getting ready to go for two and say, fuck them picks. Like, I'm not worried about tanking for an organization that probably is going to fire me in about 3 hours. We're going to win this damn football game the old-fashioned way. We're going to go – well, not the old-fashioned way, but we're going to go for two. We're going to try to win the football game, right? And he does. The two-point conversion that altered, I don't know, 2 franchises at least. So when it comes to the Bryce Young sweepstakes that everybody was vying for, fast forward a year later, you're probably thanking your lucky stars if you're a Texans fan for Lovie Smith. As rookie CJ Stroud looks like an adult right off the bat, right? Leads him to a 10-7 record, I think it was. You end up with a playoff win. You fast forward another year, you're probably upset, right? You're pissed off coming off of last season. Hey, the Texans took a step back because they went 10-7 and won a playoff game. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying you didn't take a step back. You just didn't take a step forward, especially when considering everything that happened last year with the Texans. I think that's a good thing that you feel that way after a 10-7 season wherein you win a playoff game and you go toe to toe with the Chiefs. And that wasn't the best version of your football team last year by any stretch of the imagination. And you're in a game, frankly, in the fourth quarter with the Kansas City Chiefs, who need no introduction, especially at Arrowhead. It's a bit reductive, right, to be like, hey, the records are the same and you win a playoff game. But my point is, considering that, everything that went wrong for that team in 2024, injuries to Diggs, to Collins at times, to Joe Mixon at times, to Tank Dell, and that wasn't just an injury. That was gruesome. You had players crying on the field, namely your quarterback. I mean, that was crushing for them. I mean, he was such an important guy to them in the locker room and on the field. You had an offensive line that couldn't pick up a free runner to save its life. Like, it didn't matter who the free runner was. It could be my 9-year-old son. He was getting to CJ Stroud. It was crazy. They took over 50 sacks. A scheme under Bobby Slowick that went stale, right? Like, it just did. He was one of the hot young names. We were talking about Slowick going to be a head coach soon and all that stuff. He was on this show. I really enjoyed talking to Bobby Slowick. I don't mean any disrespect, but the scheme went stale. The run game struggled. Second half adjustments were non-existent. Second half of football games, it was like you could set your watch to it. The Texans would come out and look hapless. On paper, though, it is the same year, the same result. So when you're talking about a build where you didn't come into that season expecting to maybe win a Super Bowl, although I picked them to go very far in the playoffs, it's not exactly like the world ended in 2024 for the Houston Texans. And I think there are some growing pains that some teams have to go through. And hopefully these are growing pains. It is a new era in Texans football. You've got Nick Caley for Bobby Slowick at offensive coordinator. You've got Cole Popovich for Chris Strouser, who's a name that not a lot of people outside of Houston might know. But if you live in Houston, you follow the Texans, you know who Chris Strouser is. And you better learn who Cole Popovich is because he might be the key to the whole damn season. You got Laramie Tunsil in Washington. You got a revamped interior. You know, it's not exactly like bing, bang, boom. It's not that easy to just wash your hands of 2024. Listen, D'Amico Ryans is not a New England guy, right? He has no New England background, but Nick Caserio does. He's a guy I really like. He's a guy I really trust. And we know the old story. Coaches, executives, mostly coaches, leave New England. And, you know, they're like birds that they've been fed. Bill's been feeding them regurgitated food. And then it's time to leave the nest. You know, spread your wings, go find your own food. And the branches of this tree have kind of fallen flat, right? Like there haven't been a lot of guys that have been able to recreate what New England's done by trying to be Bill or trying to build the same program. There's a long list of those guys. That's why I think Mike Vrabel's so unique, because I think Mike Vrabel is a real success story. He's got the New England edge. You know, there's definitely some Patriot in him, and he brings that back to New England, but he's not Bill. He's not trying to be Bill. None of that. So people often fail to replicate that Patriot way, but I really like Nick Caserio, and I think they're doing things, and you'll see this year, a little bit more Patriot-like offensively, okay? Like there's going to be two guys that are going to be really key who I already mentioned that were spending time in New England like a decade ago. I actually crossed over with them. I think Nick Caley's fantastic. He's an awesome dude. Good coach, good track record, offensive coordinator, and Cole Popovich, who, listen, Dante Scarnecchia, he couldn't coach forever. But if you could clone him, I mean, he'd be the best offensive line coach in football along with Jeff Stoutland for decades to come. Like he's one of those teachers, man. He really is. And the work speaks for itself. Obviously, working in concert with Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady is not too bad. But I think most people recognize him as one of the best offensive line minds of our generation. And he coached in front of Cole Popovich. Cole Popovich learned from Dante Scarnecchia, from Scar. So this is a big deal. Like if Cole was taking notes and he's half the coach Scar was, they're going to be a lot better. Going back to the offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, another John Carroll guy, another branch of the John Carroll tree, which has been awesome. Like you think about, like, isn't Don Shula a damn John Carroll guy? Like you go all the way back, there's all these dudes. If you go to Wikipedia and look at like all the coaches that came out of John Carroll, players, it's fantastic. Okay.
Yep.
That John Carroll degree is not going to fix the Texans offense, but I think it's a cool factoid. Nick's got experience in LA. He's got experience in New England, but from what I hear, again, like they're going to skew more New England, right? Like there are going to be elements that come from Sean McVay, but I mean, Mechie said this before he was traded. I read this somewhere, that it reminded him of the Bill O'Brien offense that he was a part of at Bama. Like that's okay, that tracks. CJ Stroud's going to have more autonomy. We're hearing that. He's going to be able to make checks at the line of scrimmage. He's going to have more ownership of the offense. He didn't have as much of that last year, which had to be frustrating. There's going to be more motion, more pre-snap movement compared to last year. You're going to have checks at the line, right? Like checks at the line, you know, sounding a little bit more New England, quick throws, sounding a little bit more New England. And that's great, especially for a guy that probably felt like he was trapped last year. He took 50 plus sacks, and there were some lowlights, bro. Like when you think about, when I say they couldn't pick up a free runner, like think back to the Green Bay game, think back to like the Minnesota game, like they were just lost at times. And when you look at that offensive line on paper, you were kind of like, oh, that'd be all right. That'd be pretty good. But that unit was one of the biggest stories, and not in a good way, in last year's NFL. The run game's paramount. Okay, and I think it will pay dividends in the pass game as well. We're going to have more gap scheme compared to last year, where Slowick was mostly a zone guy. I think all that plays into like the let's be more fucking physical aspect of it. You know, look at the bigger guys they're bringing in. You know, the left tackle, Tay Ursary from Minnesota. He's like 340 pounds. The guy's, look at the picture of this guy. He's a unit. And he actually looks pretty good on tape. You know, when you hear the quotes about him and then you match up the preseason play, you're like, okay, Quotes plus preseason evidence equals possible production 2025. Quotes from other players, right? Because preseason almost means less than the quotes from the other players. When you're hearing CJ Stroud rave about the guy and other guys on the team, Will Anderson included, rave about the guy, I think you're going to get something out of him this year. Sure, at times will he get made to look a little slow-footed compared to some of the faster guys? Sure, yeah, absolutely. He's a rookie and he's a big body. If he sets inside out and makes guys earn it, that's what you need. You can't have CJ Stroud's front shoulder and front ear hole getting just demolished by a guy who wins inside. Make that guy run the hump. Make guys earn it. Top down rushes. Laken Tomlinson, big guys. Watch them work together in the run game already. I like the physicality there. So, enter Cole Popovich. We talked about that. He's learned from Scar. He's got the guys doing push-ups after practice. People are like, Texans fans are like, oh, yeah, we're turning this thing around. And, the loss of Tunsil is, it's a big deal on paper because he's one of the best tackles in the league and has been for a number of years. But Texans fans were kind of growing tired of the pre-snap penalties and that sort of thing. So an offensive line room it's a subtle thing, dude. The thing that can make a unit really good one year and not so good the next year. It could be the loss of a player. It could be the addition of a player. It could be the vibe in the room. It could be the way that the offensive line coach teaches protections, right? Because for the most part, offensive linemen are not superior athletes. They are in a sense that, like, listen, if a guy who's 315 walks in the bar and jumps up on the bar top, like, you're like, holy shit, that's one of the best athletes on the planet. But in the NFL, it really is. It's less about athleticism as it is about how the unit performs together, how they communicate, the protections. They're at the mercy of all that. It's not like defensive line where it's like, hey, what kind of dogs do you have on that group? What's the ceiling of a young draft pick, that sort of thing. Like, a coach makes a big difference. So, yeah, you might lose Laramie Tunsil, have to rely on a couple free agents, a rookie, but you can improve in a year, and I think they will. And when you hear quotes from, like, Andrews, the center, when people wake up Monday morning, they're going to know they played the Houston Texans. Like, okay, he's saying that with his chest.
Hell yeah.
CJ Stroud's talking about, I'm hearing that pop when the guys come off the line. He calls his guys dogs. He talks about how nice it is to see Howard feeling confident. Like, the tea leaves are telling me that this unit's going to be better. And so if this unit's going to be better, why wouldn't the Houston Texans be better? Just this thing alone. Okay. Not to mention the Ursary kid says in his, like, first phone call to CJ Stroud, he's like, I'm willing to die out there, bro. Like, CJ's like, holy shit, we're just playing football. But that's the kind of mentality that this offensive line's going to evidently have. Now, they got to go out and prove it. And then, obviously, Nick Chubb's got to be the guy in Mixon's absence, and that thing's becoming sort of a mystery. Like, we don't know when we get Mixon back. It's probably early in the season, if not week 1. But, like, it sounds like it's going to drag on maybe into the first month. And he's a guy you absolutely need, but maybe Nick Chubb has enough in the tank to spell him early in the season. Listen, that second half drive, I know I keep talking about it. If you're a Texans fan, you listen to this podcast, don't kink shame me, but I like a 15-play, 82-yard drive, 10-plus minutes. That's what that was out of the gate at Arrowhead in the second half. This team was down multiple guys throughout the entire season. They were playing like shit. They backed into the playoffs. They got fucking mollywopped by Baltimore. It was just so demoralizing. I would give D'Amico Ryans and this group credit for getting back up off the mat. That was like a holiday game. I think I watched that from my in-laws, and they were like, what's wrong with the Texans? I was like, it's a long story. But, like, of course, the Texans score a touchdown on that drive, and they miss an extra point, which to me was emblematic of the entire season. Even the best version of the Texans last year failed to execute on the small things. They did the big things well at times, but they couldn't do the little things, whether it was getting lined up in the middle of a drive, killing a drive because of a penalty, a roughing the passer penalty, like whether you like the call or not in Kansas City, little things like that matter. Okay. So that was the story of the Texans last year. It was injuries, it was scheme, it was coaching up front, and it was execution. And yes, Tank Dell's going to be watching this season from the training room. Yes, Diggs is gone, but they really like Higgins. Here's another 6'4" wide receiver. I mean, Nico Collins he's all 6'5", dude. Like, you walked by me in the lobby and I was like, what's up, Nico? You are, brother. And then the second thing was, this young rookie Noel, who's a speedy guy out of Iowa State. He's garnered some rave reviews as far as like, hey, he's going to show up in some spots with some explosives for them. That will definitely help. And Christian Kirk is a veteran player who's played some really good football in this league. Like, I don't think this wide receiver room is too bad. I mean, you're doing a lot of projecting here, and certainly Nick Caley is going to throw some tight ends at you. I mean, I saw him in an interview chuckle when they said, hey, you like 13 personnel? He's like, absolutely. I like a little 13 personnel. Now, Brevin Jordan's hurt, so somebody's got to step up in that tight end room. But you're going to see multiple guys on the field. You're going to run the fucking football this year, and you should. The way I see the Texans, the best version of the Texans, this chapter of the Texans, is going to be playing fantastic defense. I'm going to talk about them in a second. I'm not going to spend as much time on defense because I think the biggest swing unit in the entire division is obviously it's the Texans offense. And they're the ones that there's the most question marks around when it comes to a relevant team in the AFC South. If they can run the football and play good defense and get into third and manageable and execute, get that ball out, keep CJ Stroud clean, get it to the point where this rookie 2 years ago who looked like a fucking vet last year his eyes were down on the rush, because eventually even the best quarterbacks, when they're just under siege, are going to do this. We want his eyes back here. You know what I'm saying? And when CJ's eyes are downfield and he's moving in the pocket, one of the things I love about him is his ability to slide around in the pocket like a Joe Burrow with his eyes downfield. That's the guy I saw rookie year. But 54 sacks later, you hope an offseason where those habits are broken can kind of break that out of him, and he goes back to what he was the first year. Defense, man, this is a defense that plays fast. I always talk about like the Chicago game last year. Go watch a game at home where quarterbacks, they got a quarterback in the camel clutch and he's checking down. Like, they have an area of the field called the kill zone. And while Azeez Al-Shaair might have extended the kill zone at times last year from a real estate perspective and, played beyond the echo of a whistle, the headhunting attitude is what makes them fun to watch. It really does. You want to play on one side of that line. You can't cross that line. But fucking love watching this defense play, especially when they play at home and they have that D-line forcing checkdowns. It really is a sight to see. And, I talk about Will Anderson. I praise him profusely off the top of this pod. He is a fantastic football player. I mean, just an all-around football player. But what I like about it is, like, you hear going there that D'Amico Ryan says after 2 years, hey, rookies, you want to know what it's all about being a Houston Texan? Follow this guy around. That says everything you need to know. And I got that vibe from him in sitting down with him for 30 minutes. He's not only one of your best players on defense, but he is maybe, along with, the Hunters of the world and, some of the guys, Azeez Al-Shaair, like, he might be the heart and soul. He doesn't necessarily have to be the best player on defense, but he's the heart and soul. And especially when you're rushing across from a guy like Danielle Hunter, who's put together, frankly, like Hall of Fame numbers. He's on a Hall of Fame trajectory from a numbers standpoint. I don't necessarily know if he's going to the Hall of Fame. I'm just saying, like, when you look at a guy, he's probably going to finish with 150 sacks. I mean, what's he at now? Like 110?
99 and a half.
Okay, so I'm a year ahead. But he's got a real shot to end up in that, low to mid hundreds echelon. And there's not too many guys in that class. I mean, he's fantastic. You look at him on TV, you're like, these guys looks like a fucking G.I. Joe. And it's the same thing when you see him at camp. These two guys are great. And we should mention Taylor, who I've been a fan of since he came in the league, edge rusher from Tennessee, spent time in Seattle. I watched him at practice and I'm like, yeah, that's a really good third rusher. I mean, and they like him. They talk about him. He gives them some juice. So, rushing coverage, man, this is what this thing's all about. The linebacker play's got to be better, right? Generally. But the secondary is pretty good. It's got a chance to be really good. Stingley, Lassiter outside. Stingley's obviously one of the best man corners in the entire league. And and just where do receivers get any air playing this group? I mean, like, and if they get air, they got to worry about their heads getting knocked off.
Right.
Bullock was listed by, I think, Nico Collins on this show as the most underrated Texan.
Yep.
And, has had a really good camp. He's an ascending player. CJ Gardner-Johnson dodged a bullet with the injury early in camp. That was some people were really excited about having him on the team. Petries and nickel can also knock your fucking block off. And they drafted Jalen Smith, who's been getting rave reviews. So not a bad thing to have a surplus of corners, and they've got a surplus of rushers a little bit. The thing that's a little bit of a question mark on this defense is going to be the run defense, the interior defensive line. These guys got to step up. Honestly, it's kind of like, hey, if the offensive line can play well, if this group can be more physical in the run game, if the interior defensive line plays big, this is as close to a top 3 defense on paper as I see on the board. I mean, they're fast, they're physical, and it's rushing coverage in today's NFL. It really is. But you can't forget about the run defense. So guys got to step up. All right, so finishing up for the Texans, we've got the schedule. Let's look at the schedule. Oh, shit. Right off the bat, LA, Tampa Bay, Baltimore. You want to talk about protection concerns and trying to figure out if your offensive line is there? Just enlisted. Where are we headed? Normandy. Jared Verse and all those motherfuckers in LA, Tampa Bay, Todd Bowles, Baltimore. Yeah. Just generally tough tests. So
Baltimore's on the road too, week 5.
And Baltimore's kind of owned them.
You'll even have Tennessee week 4. We just saw that defense. We know what the kind of stuff Denard wants to do, the way he wants to challenge protection too. So, definitely going to be some stress on the O-line there early on.
And an early bye week 6, is that
not ideal?
Right.
Maybe more ideal for a group that if they're struggling out of the gate up front and they have major adjustments to make, it's better to get to the lifeboat earlier. That's something people don't think about, right? Because you got to figure this team's got a bullseye on their back as far as D coordinators. Let's find out. Let's find out if they learn how to pick up a stunt. Let's find out if they learn how to pick up pressure. And it's not going to go away until they stop it, right? So week 6 seems early on the surface. Now, let's say everything's going well. It's a good problem to be lamenting about an early bye week, but in the event that things are dicey coming out, it's not the worst time to regroup and get to the side of the pool if you can't swim well.
And a quick historical note: the Texans have won 10 games, at least 10 games the last 2 seasons. They've never done it in 3 straight seasons, and they've never made the playoffs in 3 straight seasons. So if you're looking to break a little history, this is the year.
It's happening. All right, I'm not gonna give out my division winners and all that shit right now, but I make no bones about it. I'm it's like Tin Cup right now. I missed last year. I really didn't miss that bad because I had them making a deep run, but I didn't see them as being 10-7 and looking the way they looked. Give me another ball. I'll do it again. I like the Texans this year. I really do. So they're just going to be – their offense is – it's funny, when Detroit and Houston practice against each other, one of the things is Detroit's defense is seeing a different look than they're used to against their offense. It's a totally different offense. They're going to be more methodical, right? And I think they're going to develop a personality as the year goes on. So that's the Texans. Now to the portion of the podcast where I try to remember how this division finished in order last year. It felt like nobody won this division last year. It really did, because with the vibe around the Texans and the Colts and the Jags and the Titans, it's man. So I don't even the Colts were number 2 in this division last year somehow.
Which
is crazy. So we'll go to the Colts. Listen, the Anthony Richardson thing is really unfortunate. Obviously, it's the understatement of the century if you're an Indianapolis fan. But they've had 11 quarterbacks, I think, since Andrew Luck, and a lot of them they've been on this like kind of carousel of veterans, like hired guns, like hey, give us one more year, Phillip Rivers, or hey, Matt Ryan, let's see if there's any magic in you, Carson Wentz. I don't know if I can name them all, but Brissett, Ellinger. I know I'm forgetting a bunch of them, but Anthony Richardson, Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, the list goes on. But it's been a carousel for sure. And what's crazy is like when you try to put a Band-Aid on it and you try to do the quick fix thing, you try to skip the build portion of it over a period of time. And then the first shot at a draft pick you take is on a guy that's like a total project. He's like a boom bust type guy. He is the definition of a boom bust type deal. He's a long odds parlay.
Yep.
And I took one side of that thing. I'll be honest. I was like, hey, I don't mind it, especially in a draft. Like, who else in that draft? I think the unfortunate for them is like where it fell. It went Young, it went Stroud, it went Richardson, and then it went Levis. Now, maybe what you would like to have done is passed up on the flyer on Richardson and drafted a Levis, or just sat the entire thing out. But they have been in this purgatory situation where I know Chris Ballard, people want him gone. And I know Anthony Richardson, blood's on his hands. And, Jim Irsay is not here to defend himself on this thing. Like if he were involved in the decision, and it's a new era and everything. And yeah, like people start to hate GMs, like, right. But I do think, and as evidenced by this roster, like there's some decent players on this. It's not a bad roster. It's really not a bad roster. It's just got funny holes. And like, the thing about taking the shot at Richardson is like, and I got enamored with the boom. I just think they got impatient. As patient as they were, they picked a weird time to be like, yep, this year. And part of that is because usually you're picking in the middle of the draft. And my biggest fear when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts, if you're a fan, is that this is going to continue. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's going to continue. Is because I look at this team and I say that they're not brutally, like, it's not like awful. And with Richardson, there was the checking out of that game and people, rumors that maybe the locker room quit on him. I thought his footwork was completely inconsistent. I mean, like, you didn't know what he was going to be throw to throw. He missed a lot of gimmies, and then he'd hit like the 80-yard fucking. It was like he had a missile on his shoulder, the bomb to start the season. I think it was against the Texans.
Getting tackled too, literally mid tackle.
Yeah, no, the guy is a freak show, and it's why I think they're sitting him in the in the last preseason game, is because somebody's going to want to take a shot at this guy and say, I think I can fix him.
Yep.
What's he got under the hood? How many horsepower? He's got no steering wheel, like no, like anything, but I think I can fix him. No airbags, fine, no problem. What's the accident report look like? A lot of accidents, but man, he's got a lot of potential. It's for some other team, like some other team's going to take a flyer on him, and all it's going to cost is like a 4 at most, right? We were talking about this. Like, I don't think it's going to be something where you got to give up much to get a guy that 2 years ago somebody gave up the 4th pick in the draft or whatever it was to get. So you want him healthy so you can ship him out of town. And I'm pretty sure as soon as he took that bad sack with the free runner to start preseason, it was kind of like a moment where you're like, okay, it's been a lot of time. I wonder if he's learned anything this offseason. And it was like immediately, no, he hasn't learned anything. This is the most basic of basic looks you're going to see. And not only did he take it in the ear hole, pause, he also got hurt on the play, which is another issue so far, has been durability with him. So it was just one of those things where it was like, you kind of knew that the competition was over. And there's still an Anthony Richardson hive that's upset and saying, like, why don't you just play him and that sort of thing. Well, you might be proved right one day. Like, maybe at some point this guy unlocks something somewhere else, but I don't think it's going to be here. I do think this is one of those situations at this point where somebody needs a change of scenery, and so does this team. So here we are. I look at the Giants roster the year they won a playoff game in Minnesota with Danny Dimes, and I got to say, I think this offense is better. I do. They don't have Saquon, obviously, but they got a pretty good back who took a step back in the right direction last year, right? And, Pittman is a high floor guy. He's a number one. He's not maybe the best number one, but he's a number one, and I respect the fuck out of his game. Pierce is a guy who can go up and get the football. Downs, pretty underrated. And Mitchell's got maybe the highest ceiling of any of them. He's got to clean up the drop rate, which was 14%. That kind of crept up on me. But guys were open last year. They really were. I mean, there is the bones of a functioning offense here. What you don't understand about when Anthony Richardson's on the field and on early downs, the passing game is now the extension of the run game in the NFL. And this is even for a team that runs inside zone pretty well and they've got a stud running back. Like, quick game, getting 5 yards on first down, like throwing it out, like throwing a slant, whatever it is, an RPO. Like, Richardson was missing on the easiest shit. And what you got to realize is, like, these are gimmies that you assume are going to put your offense in phase on. Like you assume that you're going to get to third and manageable. Even if you're trying to be, what you get is you get an offense that you're trying to be conservative. You can't even try to be conservative without just 3 yards in a cloud of dust because the quarterback's missing the easy shit, right? So then you end up in like third and long or in these disadvantageous situations, and obviously this guy's not there yet. So I think, if you're looking at it glass half full, and this is how I'm going to do the remainder of these teams in the AFC South, because it really is like, you tell me, what are your aspirations? Put them in the comments. Like, truly, your realistic aspirations for all these teams outside of the Texans. There's a glass half full look at it, and there's a glass half empty look at it. And I'm kind of giving you both. But the glass half full look at it here is this is a better roster offensively than the one that Danny Dimes won a playoff game with. And I would say, I don't remember how that division was in 2022 or 3 or whatever it was. Years are running together. That's how long I've been out. But I don't know if this division is like murderer's row. So, we mentioned the wide receivers. You know what the back looks like. I think Tyler Warren's going to be a damn good pro football player. I was pretty certain of that. I don't do college football like that, and I'm not saying in a snobby way. I just don't have time. I got 3 kids. Saturdays for my kids and flag football and hanging out. I might throw a couple chickens on a Pac-12 game once everybody goes to bed. But for the most part, I'm just watching as a fan. And Tyler Warren's one of those guys last year. When I was watching, I was like, he's going to be a pro football player. Like, he's going to be a good one. So I'm excited about seeing him. Another thing you got to look at is, like, I think they'll get something out of zone read. Don't forget that Danny Dimes he's a decent runner. I know some people judge him by his paint job, but he's got a little athleticism when he's not tripping over his own feet. I think they'll get something out of him running the football this year, and also you don't have to worry about what if he gets hurt? Like, we don't have much invested in this guy. What's the worst that happens? We pick at the top of the draft again?
In arguably a much better quarterback draft class.
That's exactly right. Come to think of it, let's run Danny Dimes 20 times a game. See what happens.
God.
We mentioned it. The wide receivers were open last year more than that had to be one of the most frustrating rooms to be a part of.
Yeah.
You think about rooms that, like, in the NFL that you feel handcuffed. Football's hard enough at this level. And you're like, damn, it's even harder because Anthony Richardson's throwing me the football. And not to mention, he's a guy that kind of quit on us at one point. Like, and I'm not saying anything bad about the guy. I got nothing against the kid. I think sometimes, like, people are very literal. Like, coaches used to tell us, hey, if you don't like it here, you can leave. Everybody always knew you don't just leave, right? That was more like shut the fuck up. That was the translation there. Coaches always used to say, and usually they're talking to position players, if you're too tired, tap out. And I think Anthony Richardson took that very literally. That's my explanation for what happened. He was like, well, I'm fucking tired. Didn't you say? Like, no, you're the quarterback, brother. So had to be a frustrating team to be on last year. And also Shane Steichen, who I haven't really mentioned this whole time, his seat's heating up. We've had him on the show. I like Shane. I thought he was a big part of, Jalen Hurts' emergence in Philly and that sort of thing. And honestly, like there was a time where a lot of Philly fans were probably like, hey, he's the one who got away. But when you look at it, like the best quarterback that he's had so far has been Gardner Minshew.
Right.
Let that sink in. And I'm not saying it's going to be any different this year, but what I am saying is like take that in consideration when you evaluate how this team's played. He can only work with what he's had. And I don't know. Like, you tell me, was he the one that pulled the trigger on Anthony Richardson? There's talent evaluation and there's execution. I think from a scheme standpoint, like he's a bright offensive mind. That guy's still in there. I don't know if Danny Dimes has the ceiling to realize the hopes and dreams of Colts fans, but the offense could be competitive. There could be a lot of, wow, what the fuck was he doing moments. We know how those look.
Right.
But
last year.
Again, the roster is not like in awful shape. Yeah, we didn't even talk about the offensive line. Like they've got two guys that they're really filling in for Fries and Kelly who played last year, right? Like, and we had one of them on the show, Bortolini. The other one, Calvis. There you go. He didn't get a lot of shout outs on the TV broadcast. O-linemen never get talked about unless they fuck something up. But he actually played a little bit last year, and he's played both positions, guard and tackle. He's probably better inside. Obviously you have Quentin Nelson, two good tackles. So, good luck. It's the best I can do for you Colts fans as you look at this offense. Now, Gus Bradley's out on defense. I love Lou Anarumo. I'm just a fan of the guy.
Lou.
Sweet Lou. I think you're going to see better returns when on the pass rush. Like, I'm a Latu fan. I think he's got really good hands. I know people want guys to have 10 sacks a rookie year. Your pass rush is a thing where guys come on at different rates. And also, like, you got to consider, like, the situation you end up in. Will Anderson comes to like a D'Amico Ryans-led defense where guys are aggressive and, you got some pieces around you or, that sort of thing. I just talked about him. Latu, last year, rookie, he's playing in a Gus Bradley defense where, they're going to be vanilla and the coverage isn't going to be real sticky. It's not going to be real aggressive. The fractions of time don't work in the rusher's favor. Latu, he's going to take a jump. I think Pay's turned into a really solid Robin-type rusher. He's your number two kind of guy. Now, they don't really have a number one, right? And the kid they drafted from Ohio State, as I take a stab at his name, JT Tuimoloau, JT as I call him, who actually had a really nice game against the Ravens. I saw him loop around on a stunt, have a sack, get in on a couple other plays. Like, he dodged a bullet in the opener. He got hurt, but he's gonna be back. Like, they actually lost their third rounder, I think, for the year, which is super unfortunate for a team that could use all the draft picks they could get. I love Grover Stewart. I love Buckner. And don't forget Ebukam, who's coming off an ACL, or actually an Achilles rather. And those can be tricky and everything, but like you'd love to see him get back out there. It's not like the edge group is not fantastic. It actually kind of reminds me of Tennessee a little bit. And we'll get there in a second, where it's like the backbone of this defense are those two guys inside, right? Hopefully the aggressive scheme lends itself to the guys on the edge making more plays. It is not just a kitchen sink defense. Lou will mix it up. I think one of the big questions is, will the guys be able to learn on the right curve to be able to get the defense down week to week as they change form according to the challenge at hand. The secondary improved. Ward came in from San Francisco. Safety group, solid. I really like Nick Cross. Really like him. He had kind of a breakout year last year. I like his physicality in the run game. Sometimes I don't know what the hell is going on in coverage when I'm watching real time. But when I see a guy come down and thump somebody or put his hat into a tackle, the willingness to get into the run front, I really like Nick Cross. He made a ton of tackles last year. And he was 20 when they drafted him. He kind of had some ups and downs early. Bench for Rodney McLeod, my good buddy. And now he's kind of fully grown. He's turned into a real exciting piece on this defense. How good would this team be if they had a top 10 quarterback? Do I sound like too glass half full there? My job is to inform people on what I see when it comes to like the roster as a whole and that sort of thing. But it's also to sell some fucking hope. And if you live in Indiana, don't you need some hope? I think if you had a top 10 quarterback, you're a playoff team. I mean, there's some holes in the defense, and that's why quarterback's so important. You could probably say that for a lot of teams in the NFL. But the roster isn't that bad. And I'm sure I'm going to get the most pessimistic Colts fans are going to be like, dude, you're not seeing it. And I respect you. I respect you for your pessimism and your anger, and you've had enough. But I think my biggest fear is that even in 2026, where the QB class is deeper, they play themselves into purgatory once again. Schedule's tough. Week 11 bye, then Texans twice, Jags twice, at Seattle, at Kansas City, host the Niners. So if you've got aspirations of competing in the division, you'll still have a shot in November. But that's only if the bottom doesn't fall out early in the year. It'll be a tall task. I'm not saying this team's going anywhere. They're probably going to be right in the middle, and that's the unfortunate thing. Jaguars, Liam Cohen, Duval. Definitely not the way to say it, but I actually think it's a good sign. I have a theory that the worse the first impression is for an NFL head coach at the microphone or at the podium, the better it is for the team. Do you remember when Dan Campbell was a meathead because he said he wanted to bite people's knees? Do you remember when Nick Sirianni was too nervous? Do you remember when Jonathan Gannon, he's in the middle of a build, but he's building, was a cornball because he wanted to go pew verticals, dude? Like, everybody loves these guys. So don't listen to the media. Don't get, including myself, don't get too caught up in this shit at the podium. He said Duval wrong. No big deal. This guy's a hell of a football coach. If it doesn't work out for, I don't know, we'll find out if he's a head coach. But his number one job is pull the sword from the stone and fix Trevor Lawrence. Like, that's it. Like, certainly there's a lot else to fix with this team. And I thought last year they played absolutely uninspired. I felt like they just kind of quit, which is really hard. Unfortunate because, I love Doug and everything, but it just, at times last year, I was like, man, this team's got no fight. So he's got to get the team to play harder, play with more passion, believe. But the number one thing is to fix Trevor Lawrence. Since that 2023 collapse, am I misremembering this? Or in 2023, was it not like the Steelers game where it all started? Because I remember there being something about the terrible towels.
They beat the Steelers in Week 8 in 2023 to get to 6-2. They hit their bye, and they won 3 of the remaining games. They went from 6-2 and finished 9-8.
Right, and the last game they won was the Steelers game, and they were throwing those terrible towels around, and they were disrespecting the towels.
Yep.
And it might be the curse of the terrible towels, dude. I honestly, because ever since that point, it's been the collapse. Like, 2023, there was a collapse. In 2024, it was like a flat line. It was a total flat line. Lawrence has been hurt. He's played poorly. Nielsen was a whiff. I was shocked by that. I was wrong on that. I thought he'd be a better coach, although there are holes in the personnel defensively that persist today. And now you got some serious dead cap issues. So I'm not saying this thing's going to turn around right away, but I would say the ceiling of this team is probably higher than the ceiling of the Colts. And a lot of it is because, and maybe you're just, I haven't accepted that Trevor Lawrence is not a good quarterback yet. Like I've definitely leaned that way. I've been making this point for the better part of 2 years of like, hey, I love his toughness. He seems like a great dude. He's got a lot of tools. But ultimately, like, what's between the ears? And I don't mean intelligence. I just mean like a feel for the game, for space, for timing. That ultimately, that invisible skill set with quarterbacks, at times I've questioned whether Trevor has it. But I'm also not sure that a coach can't bring it out in him, like the right scheme fit. And so we'll see. And when you watch the Bucs last year, the pessimistic look on it is like that Baker's thrived with almost all his coordinators on some level as of late. Like, like Baker looked good with Canales. He looked good with Cohen. He's looked good at times with Stefanski, and Cohen's only really popped up in this one spot. He was at Kentucky 2 years ago. But last year, that offense was a thing of beauty. And when you break down the tape and look at what they did well, there are a lot of QB-friendly elements, a lot of quarterback's best friend type things. Run game, they had 3 running backs who ate last year. They committed to it, and at times it was their life vest because they lost guys outside. They brought along rookie wide receivers. They developed people. That's a programmatic thing with the Bucs as well. We've talked about that. But Trevor's never had a run game. Not like a consistent, sustained rushing attack that he can lean on. The screen game is going to help a lot. The Bucs were fantastic there. Those backs thrive with screen game. The wide receivers outside caught a lot of screens. Quick game. When you watch them a lot of times, they play with such pace, just in general, but also like the ball was out. That's quarterback-friendly element. And it also takes the thinking out of it. And for a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, at times I feel like, the longer in the down it goes, I'm like a little bit more worried, right? And you'd like to see him play with more timing and hit the easy stuff. The Bucs thrived there. They get the ball out. They morphed into whatever they needed to week. They were versatile. Like there were games where they got in 13 personnel a bunch of times. I think like when they played the Chargers, they were running the ball up their ass. I remember there was a game where like Sean Tucker had 100 yards. I think it was the Saints, but it just. They were also games where they just spread it out and you couldn't stop the passing attack. So he had to hit the curveball with a number of injuries. I was really impressed with the job he did. Formationally, from an identity standpoint, there'll be more gap scheme, right? Like that's one difference I can probably point to in the run game. And that's all well and good, but if Lawrence can't keep himself out of harm's way, number one, physically, and number two, make good decisions with the football, it's going to be the beginning of the end for him. Like it's time. It's a weird situation where a coach comes in to fix the quarterback, but like the coach might last longer than the quarterback, right? If he can't. Like
right.
Cohen's kind of in a safe spot because if it doesn't work, he can be like, well, it's Trevor Lawrence. Like, give me another guy. Trevor Lawrence, this is his last chance, in my opinion. And, also one thing that I really liked, I just want to make a note of this. You want a guy like Trevor Lawrence reading half the field. Like you want easy wins for him at times. And I thought the Bucs did a really good job of that. One thing that like, if you get into film junkie stuff with Liam Cohen, the flood concepts, half the field, dude, simplify things. You got the receivers to do it. Roll him out, move the pocket, take advantage of that big arm, but make things simpler. Make things decisive for this guy. Cohen can't bring the offensive line with him. And I think it's one of the biggest question marks for this team. But the wide receiver room, at the very least, is potentially exciting. I mean, like Brian Thomas Jr., if he played for the New York Giants, well, I can't say that because Malik Neighbors isn't one of the most famous football players on the planet. But like, let's say if Brian Thomas Jr. played for the Chiefs or the Eagles, everybody would know who he is. I mean, this guy he's got Hall of Fame written all over him. And a lot of it is the market, but people just don't quite know yet. They're going to know. If they can turn this quarterback play around, they're absolutely going to know. And I think at this stage in his career, Brian Thomas Jr. has a higher ceiling than anybody had in Tampa Bay in 2024. That includes Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I mean, at this stage, read the fine print here. Don't tell me I'm saying he's better than Mike Evans. But what I'm saying is this year, potentially, he's got more juice than anybody Cohen coached last year. And so when you add to that equation that maybe we see Travis Hunter play offense, I'm so tired of this fucking conversation. Does he play offense? Does he play defense? Like, let's just get to week one. I can't wait to see it. I'm not going to spend the whole breakdown going, oh, is it worth it? Is he play? Should he play offense? Should he play defense? Is it a failure if he's not? No. In fact, I think the drafting of Travis Hunter is one of the safest plays in the draft because if he's not good at one thing, he's going to be good at the other. It's like drafting two players. Okay? And I know, that sounds reductive and the whole thing, but I'm a little bit nervous about imagining him having to like, listen, if he plays corner, I think he's going to be a fantastic corner. It might come down to like, what do you need more this year? That might be short-sighted when you look at the development of his career. Like this year, what are your aspirations? Is there a point in just plugging a hole with Travis Hunter and being like, okay, well, we don't really like, second corner, so we're going to change his whole career trajectory just to play him at corner this year. Personally, I think you play him at what he's best at and don't look back. And if you want to build packages in for him on offense, great. You see where I'm slanting here, and if Trevor Lawrence development is paramount, maybe then you do put him in wide receiver. But like, I just imagine a guy, it's not just the reps. It's like with his slight frame, like being out there and like filling in the run game and that sort of thing. And then going in and then getting hit, going across the middle or something, like the physicality of the whole thing. It's not just the load on the legs, like the running. It's not going to show up on the catapult, which is the thing they used to measure, like how many steps you took and how fast are you running. Like, so how tired are you? It's also going to be like, how does he hold up physically? So, let me not do the thing that I said I was going to do and spend the whole time talking about this motherfucker playing both sides of the ball. But I love him. I think he's going to be great at whatever he does. I'm just going to keep it simple. Diami Brown, maybe an overpay depending on who you ask, but like if you got a really good number 3 out of this guy, with this wide receiver room, potentially it could be fun. And tight end room is just fine. It's nothing to write home about. I think the backs are exciting, and there's 2 elements here. Number one, I think ETN's gotten a solid workload over his career in Jacksonville. Everybody knows it, but I'm really excited to see Bigsby. Right? I thought there were times where Doug just didn't use him, and I'd love to see them lean on him a little bit more. I can't wait to see them catching screens. Evidently, they like all their backs. They think they got 4 professional running backs. And so what that could yield is like maybe if you're not happy with one, you ship one out. I mean, Brian Robinson just got traded in Washington. Maybe that's the kind of deal. And Nolan, you pointed that out, that like it could end up being a thing where somebody gets dealt. I think it's an exciting room. But remember, I said he can't bring the offensive line with him, and I do not like this offensive line. I'm just going to keep it simple on that thing. It's Harrison, Macari, Hainsey. Mitch Morris retired. Also, shout out to Mitch Morris. He's coming out with a podcast. That's my dog. I love Mitch Morris. I mean, I don't really know him like that, but he came on the show once, and I think he's really cool. So I hope the podcast is real good. Shout out to Mitch Morris. It will be. Ezra Cleveland's a guard. Walker Little. I just don't think it's a plus group. Now, evidently, the rookies have looked good, so it's promising for depth because you never know. Maybe the starter is on the sideline somewhere at some point right now. But to put it mildly, they do not have the offensive line that they had in Tampa, if you're thinking like Liam Cohen. Defensively, I'm not even going to try to do it. Give me your Paisan pronunciation for the new defensive coordinator of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
This was a fun one because I had tried a bunch of different ways, and then I saw this little clip from when he was an LB's coach at Michigan, and he said Campanile, which is as Paisan as it gets.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
We need him in Philly.
Speaking of, he should join that triumvirate up there of Paisans.
Now
Dom,
DeSandro.
and DeSandro. Dom texted me the other night, like, "Boo, check this out. There's a racehorse. Do you know this named Big Dom?
No,
there's
a
fucking racehorse. Somebody named a racehorse Big Dom, and he won a race over the weekend.
Oh,
he was like, he texted me the highlight of the horse race. He's like, check this out. Can't believe it, Boo. I was like, I do. Like, you just
one start, one win, 1 for 1.
Unbelievable.
That's a really cool life achievement thing. Have a horse named after you. A winning horse, no less.
Is it a mini horse?
No,
you said a winning horse. Now that would be that would be the most ironic thing in the world if they were like, I want to name my small horse Big Dom. So anyways, Campanile, he can you cue some Italian music in the background? He's a Jeff Hafley disciple, and you know how Jeff Hafley turned around that Green Bay defense last year. He's got some Fangio roots, yeah. So like we'll see. I don't know, like Walker and Allen, we love that duo. I think Trayvon Walker's a guy who got a special place in my heart because like people were on his ass like year one. They were like, and a lot of it's because of Hutchinson, but this guy's a really good player. Him and Hines Allen are good together, man. And I think finding a third rusher that's really dependable for them is going to help because there were times last year where I was like, it's got to be them. Gardeck is not the headliner of the group, but once he's healthy, I can't wait to see him play. He was a terror out there for the Cardinals, and he'll have some positional flexibility. But Agba and Smoot are going to be depth. D tackle room is like the O-line of this unit, where I just don't see it. It's patchwork, and I think they'll struggle to stop the run a little bit. You need to undergo a cultural change that is not insignificant to stop the run with this group, and that's not taking anything away from the guys. Like, they just don't have. They're not a tremendously talented group. They bring in Saunders late in camp, secondary Tyson Campbell, Jordan Lewis nickel. Does Hunter play corner? If not, it's going to be Jerry Jones, and he's the Saquon victim on the Madden cover. Listen, the defense is a total question mark to me. I'm not even going to sit up here and act like I know. What are my aspirations for this team? I want to see the quarterback fixed. That's objective number one. And if the quarterback gets fixed this year, this team's ceiling is a little higher than I would have thought. But again, it's last year I watched this defense and they were putrid. They were putrid. It can't just be players. It has to be an attitude thing too. It has to be an effort thing too. There were games where, from an adjustment standpoint, the Buffalo game, it was over before it started. They were just motioning people, switching backs. They're like, "Oh, here's your man indicator." Like, let's just. That was a skull fucking in Buffalo. Seriously, it was just like, it was crazy.
It was horrendous.
It was awful. So I'm not going to spend all day talking about this defense. Now, a couple guys just keep doing what you're doing. Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, just keep being dogs out there, man. Obviously, I don't mean to disrespect anybody. Like, Alucon made a lot of plays in this league, right? Lloyd, he's a tough motherfucker. A little less effective in space, but it's just one of those things where it can't just be the new additions. It's got to be a culture change on this defense. And so we're going to leave it up to the Paisan. Campanile.
Yep.
Coach Camp, as I call him. We'll finish with the Titans, man. Listen, the vibes were good in Tennessee. Like, I know this team is not maybe picked to go anywhere this year. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they end up second in the division. Like, that would not shock me. Yep. And part of it is because of the division, all right? But the question for this team is, can you be the 2023 Texans? Can you be the 2024 Commanders? And obviously, the key to that happening is Cam Ward being everything that Borgonzi and Callahan think he can be, which is, like, really good. You hear people talk about him at this camp, like, players, check. They love this guy. Love him. Mm-hmm. What's not to love about a guy who wanted to fight a grizzly bear in cleats, Jeffrey Simmons, and he's a quarterback? Like, it's kind of cute. It's like, like, we don't want you to actually do it, but just the act of, like, bowing up to Jeffrey Simmons in practice is kind of like, we're like, okay, I can ride with this guy. Like,
foxhole guy.
He's a foxhole guy. And he's also, you got to realize, like, Cam Ward's played a lot of football. A lot of football.
57
he's got like 50
starts.
college. 57.
Yep.
It's a lot of fucking football, man. And so, you've got an adult walking into the situation, an adult with big arm talent, right? Like, he's got the arm talent. He's an adult. The guys in the building love him already. The guy that drafted him spent a lot of time in Kansas City, and I heard multiple times while I was there the name Patrick Mahomes. Now, no one's saying, like, he's Patrick Mahomes. You have to be careful about it. But, like, there is some comparison to be drawn, at least in the evaluation process, of the way he sees the field, evidently, the way he sees space. We had Andy Reid on. He talked about Patrick Mahomes seeing the, like, 4 dimensions where there are only 3, right? But he sees an extra one. And it kind of sounds like they view Cam Ward the same way. I don't think he's had the preseason that's blown me away on tape. None of the quarterbacks have. None of them have. And it was a down year for quarterbacks. but just maybe, Tennessee found, their franchise quarterback, like a real franchise quarterback. I don't know that Tennessee's had one since Steve McNair. Am I wrong? Who am I forgetting?
Yeah, it depends upon how you feel about Tannehill, but I don't know.
No, no disrespect to Tannehill. I didn't forget him.
Right.
But I mean, like,
Right.
one of them dudes where, like, Tannehill's, like you say, he's a franchise quarterback in that, like, hey, you're going to have him for the better part of a decade if things are good around him. But, like, we did the eulogy on Tannehill. A lot of respect for Tannehill, but, like, ultimately, was he a guy that could elevate that team in the playoffs? I mean, not without that run game. Cam Ward, they expect him to be that guy. So maybe the wait is over. And if it is, I don't think the roster's bad enough to where they can't be cagey, scrappy, right? Here's the case for it. They lost 6 one-score games last year. Much of that stretch, they were quarterbacked by a guy who he was playing like an absolute terrorist, man. I mean, it was like Levis, somebody radicalized him. And he just, his goal at times was, and obviously I'm having fun with it, but he was doing the very best he could, and I admired his toughness. And I think Will Levis is a dude I'd like to get a beer with for sure. But, like, at times his decision making was that of a guy who I just got a beer with. You know what I'm saying? And so like, just in that respect, they were up in a number of games. Like, he just gave it away. Remember at the beginning of the season, we were sitting right here in this room watching Chicago and Tennessee. And they started beating the brakes off of Chicago. And you were like, damn, okay. Like, I love this run game. I think Callahan's doing some fun stuff with the offense. Like, I see it. Denard's doing a good job. 3 bad turnovers, like bad turnovers, including like 1 for 6. Chicago ends up winning that game. They're controlling the game against the Jets going to the half. I know these aren't like world-beating teams, but these are NFL wins. All right. They turn it over in plus territory twice, including one in the low red. And it was one of those awful flip plays. They're driving to beat Indy. They're up late against Houston. Division games, back-breaking picks. Jump Cincinnati. They almost broke Joe Burrow mentally, not physically. Like, he was on the sideline losing his fucking mind because they were getting their asses kicked by Tennessee. This team does not have an effort or a culture problem. I will say that, and that might not be popular because I know not everybody wants Brian Callahan to necessarily, or not everybody in Tennessee believes, fan-wise, that he's the guy. But I will say this, it's not a culture problem in Tennessee. You know, the vibe is good there. He's just got to get it done. This quarterback's got to be the guy. And so if you think Cam Ward can be the next Stroud or Daniels, I don't think the roster's in too bad a shape. I talked about that. You got a 3-down back in Pollard. Nice change of pace guy in Spears. J.C. Latham moving to right tackle. Maybe that'll be good for him, right? That's his natural position. You know, Dan Moore coming in from Pittsburgh. Maybe that stabilizes the tackle play. Maybe Zeitler and Skoronski are a really good pair. Skoronski's good out of the gate. Zeitler's been good his whole career. It's just he's older. Like, defensive interior is absolutely elite. I'm just going to say it right now. T'Vondre Sweat's going to be an all-pro this year. Like, I think he's got a shot to be that guy. He plays the piano up and down the line. I mean, he can work up and down the line of scrimmage. For a guy that big, his lateral quickness is great. You know, he plays with his hands. He does it all. He stacks double teams. He has wiggle in the pass game. Like, this guy's got a chance to be one of the really good ones. He was last year. All right. So it's going to be hard to run the ball in this team. I talked about that grizzly bear in cleats, Jeffrey Simmons. Sounds like the rookie's got a way to go outside. Oladejo. Sounds like things got slowed down a little bit for him, but he's going to be a player and everything. But, like, you know, they'll miss Harold Landry, that's for sure. And Arden Key's a nice rotational guy. Like, I really like Arden Key. He brings great energy. He's versatile. I have respect for him. He got up off the mat after a slow start in his career. But, like, you know, Arden Key is a nice piece. But, like, where's the Batman outside? Like, it was a Batman and Robin. Where's the Robin outside? You know, somebody's got to develop outside. You expect the corner room to be better than last year. I think Snead's going to play better. He's fresh off PUP. Brownlee, who we like, scrappy, unexpectedly played 14 games last year, cut down on the penalties a little bit, but like Borgonzi came in and started moving furniture around. Like they cut Awuzie, that's 12 million dead cap. Like traded Murray. There's some pieces that are back. Roger McCreary in the slot, solid safety group. So I'm a big Denard Wilson fan. You talk about culture. He's a culture setter, and it was great to see him along with a bunch of my former coaches. It was like a fucking reunion at that place. Honestly, it was awesome. It was Dave McGinnis, who's one of my favorite people all time. Like, I'm lucky to have a great dad and everything, but when I think about like people who are like my vice dads, if that's a term, like Dave McGinnis, vice dad. Like as
Mac
soon as
Daddy.
I saw, Mac, who's a legend, Johnny Cash of football. He only has one outfit; it's all black. And anywhere he goes, like he just brightens the room. Like he's an all-time vibes guy. He was assistant head coach for Jeff Fisher. Bones is there, Fossil, one of the best special teams coaches in the league, and spent time with him. Number of coaches that I had: Frank Bush, Johnny Hecker's there. It was like a reunion. Anyways, it was warm and fuzzy. So the biggest domino is the quarterback. We talked about it earlier. Described the bright side situation with the offensive line gelling together. Here's the negative outlook. Dan Moore's an overreach. Latham doesn't improve much at right tackle. Maybe Zeitler's durability is an issue. The pass catchers don't wow me, right? Like that to me is a big one. I love the fact they bring in Lockett, because Lockett's going to be a calming presence for a Cam Ward, right? Like how you surround that quarterback from like a standpoint of the guys that he's dealing with day to day is big. And I've always liked Ridley, but is he a number one at this stage? He's got to prove that, right? Jefferson, he's got experience, but doesn't knock your socks off unless they strike gold with one of the rookies, A.O. Manor or DK. I don't know. Like I don't know if it's set up perfectly for this team to make a run or be scrappy at this stage in Cam Ward's development. Now, Gunnar Helm can go a long way in helping them. He's a rookie tight end from Texas. People like him. They were talking highly of him. Maybe he's like your second or third option. I don't know.
Right.
But you talk about the D-line not really having a Batman, maybe the aggressive coverage outside and the jump in the product on the field you expect in a year or two defense, right, with Denard Wilson helps. But I gotta be honest, like they have to be better in the red zone, right? That's one place they struggled last year. And defensively, that should be better. Like they should be better generally, like the red zone not having anything to do with this, but generally you have to be better on defense when your offense isn't giving you a sudden change situation every 20 minutes. It is so demoralizing and disruptive, quite frankly. Like when drives are starting in your own territory, you're grabbing your helmet. Coaches are trying to talk to you to, hey, here's what we can do better now. Oh, sudden change, fuck, another interception. Like what happened? Will Levis invented a new way to throw an interception. Like this was happening with regularity, and that's really hard on a defense. So like just if the offense plays more complementary football, the defense will be better. But I mentioned some of the holes, and one of them being, I wouldn't quite call it a hole. Like who's that dominant edge rusher? They probably don't have one this year. The one thing I said is like complementary football, not turning the ball over, not putting it in harm's way. Like Cam Ward is not afraid to take chances. That at least is a little bit of the book on him relative to Jaden Daniels, who really like refuses to put the ball in harm's way. Like, so that's one thing. And you might say, hey, that's kind of exciting. Like, you got to take some chances. Like, you're going to see Cam Ward take chances. There will be hiccups. There will be turnovers. But I think he's got like a killer mentality at quarterback, which you'd rather say whoa than sick him, right? Mm-hmm. But you just can't be throwing picks all over the yard like Levis did last year. I think he's more of a freewheeler than, say, Jaden Daniels, who we just talked about. And I think you'll see more spread stuff. Okay, like more of that Cincinnati element that you couldn't quite get to last year, more unstructured shit. That's going to be fun. So at the very least, when I look at this division, I know I'm mentioning the Titans last. I said I wouldn't be surprised if they finish second or third in the division. But even if they finish last, as long as the quarterback shows growth through the year, and you kind of realize at some point they're like, yeah, he's worth the pick. It will be fun to watch them develop. I really believe that. And I don't know if it's going to cost Callahan his job in the process, but I'll tell you this. If he's what they think he's going to be, this team's going to be good in the near future because they think he's going to be good. And I think it will be fun. And he will be challenged right off the bat playing God's team, Cowboy Reed,
I'm nervous
at
for that
Denver.
matchup. I am nervous just because of Cam Ward's potential, and I will bite the cheese of a couple of those throws he's had in preseason.
Well, I can guarantee you he's pretty fucking nervous too, and Titans fans are probably pretty nervous too to face that defense right off the bat. But there's also an opportunity for growth. As we see with quarterbacks all the time, they start the season, it might not look great, and by the end of the rookie year, they're really cooking. So it's going to be trial by fire for him. But you know this, Denard Wilson, and I asked Callahan this when we were in Tennessee, like, hey, do you tell Denard to tone it down a little bit so you can get work done with a rookie quarterback? And he's like, no, I tell him to dial it up. Like I want trial by fire for Cam Ward. So that to me is what's demanded if you want him to look like he's seen it before when you get to Denver. Because newsflash, he's not going to have seen everything that's thrown at him week one. And we'll see how he reacts. And I think one of the exciting things about him is, again, how he might play out of structure. So we'll see. And Lockett's a good guy to have in the scramble drill. That dude knows how to sit down in the zone untouched with the best of them. Catch the ball, just kind of like turtle up, right? So I'm looking forward to seeing Cam Ward play. This division, man, I think it's Houston's division to lose, right? I would think that most fans of the other teams in this division would agree. I don't think I'm being disrespectful in saying that. But I'm really curious as to what you think the ceiling is for your team this year, if you are a fan, locals or otherwise, of, say, the Jaguars, the Colts, or the Titans. Leave that in the comments, and I will enjoy going through that. And if you're totally pessimistic and you want to shit on your team, put a little extra English on it. I might read it on the next podcast.
Yeah.
That's what
we'll hear you out.
Yeah, we'll hear you out for sure. Unless I don't like what you have to say. Take care, y'all.